Welcome to Ressa's Take. I'm so glad you're here. Each week, we will tackle some common challenges that we all often experience in life, and I'll share my take on the topic, along with some of my learnings from my own experiences. This is all about navigating life together and unlocking our best selves, one conversation at a time. Hello, everybody. It's your girl, Ressa. Thank you for tuning in to Ressa's Take today. I hope you had a great week. It's been a little bit longer than usual since our last episode. If you follow Ressa's Take on Instagram, I had mentioned that I was going to take a week off between episodes just to spend some time with family over Easter. But I'm back. Today, we're going to talk about the value of having a mindset that's focused on working to live and not living to work. And I really feel this is relevant regardless of what stage you're in your career, whether you're just starting or you're decades into your career. Working to live means that work is a part of your life, but it's not your whole life. And living to work is when you see work as your purpose and your primary focus for living. To put it simply, working to live just means work is not your highest priority or your only priority. And while you enjoy the work that you do, you have other things in your life that are important to you. You have other things in your life that deserve your attention. And that doesn't always mean that it has to be a spouse or a family. It could be your hobbies, your personal passions, your own health and exercise, whatever it is that matters most to you. And yes, this is a millennial telling you that there's more to life than your job. I'm so tired of the millennial and Gen Z stereotypes that we just don't want to work. No, sir, ma'am. We just don't want work to be our life. And God forbid we want a job that we're energized by, but also want more out of life. I'll talk about that in a minute. So let me not go too far down that rabbit hole before we even get started. Getting this mentality right is important for several reasons. First, it's important for your own well being. If you have tunnel vision when it comes to your work and you see that as your primary focus, I truly believe it puts you at risk for burnout. Because at that point, work has no boundaries, and it could get difficult to draw a line between where your workday starts and where it ends. And I'll talk about this a little later when I talk about my own experiences with this issue. But for ambitious high achievers, finding balance is hard because it can feel like you're drawing a boundary on your progress or drawing a boundary on your potential. But that's why it's all about balance. It's about having the right mindset so that when you do have busy moments within your job, because we all will, let's face it, when you have those moments where you might need to dedicate a lot of hours for a period of time, if you have the right mindset, checking yourself to ensure that you're keeping yourself balanced, it can help minimize the risk of isolating yourself solely to work or somehow forming a habit where work becomes your top priority. Another reason it's so important to find balance between your work and personal life is because you could risk losing sight of your own identity. If your job is your primary focus and you dedicate the majority of your time, effort, and attention to your job with little time spent focused on your personal life or anything else, what happens if you get laid off? What happens if you don't perform as well as you had hoped? A few episodes ago, I talked about the importance of separating your who from your do. It's important we get clear on who we are outside of what we do. And deprioritizing things in your personal life to make work a priority is a slippery slope to me. Now, all that said, I get that this is hard, especially if you're ambitious or if you're early in your career or if you're already stuck in a pattern of work being your main priority. All I'm saying is that it's about balance. It's not saying that being ambitious and wanting a lot from your career is bad. I think that's a wonderful thing, and I hope you get all that you're looking for. But it's about balance because if we don't break bad habits now, it can snowball into bigger issues later. There are a few situations that I think can make it even harder than normal to keep this kind of balance. If I reflect on my own situation, I'm not married and I don't have kids. So I have a lot of freedom in my schedule. I also happen to be a very ambitious person with big professional goals. So it makes it really easy to work late, to say yes to a lot of things, to a lot of people, because I have time and I'm ambitious. I have big dreams and I want to prove myself. But it's so important that we do everything we can to keep that balance. I actually saw this a lot for myself during the pandemic because there was such a blurred line between work and personal life because we were all home. working from home if we happen to be fortunate to have jobs where we could do that. And, I wasn't balancing having kids home and, helping them through school and all of that. So I noticed during that period, I picked up some habits where the lines were blurred. I was working until like 8 o'clock at night. I would start really early. I would answer things on weekends because it was so blurred. So it was some habits that I even had to break just from that. So there's a lot that can happen in life that can also sometimes steer you in that direction. And it's important for us to continue to check ourselves mentally to make sure we're keeping that balance because sometimes it can happen without us even realizing it. Another situation that can make it hard to keep balance might actually be the profession that you're in. So I work in corporate America, and no matter how urgent someone may think something is, outside of anything that might have to do with safety or the health of others, nothing is really urgent in corporate jobs. But if you're a physician or if you work in law enforcement, like those are professions that you always have to be on. Even when you're off work, you're likely on call. So I could totally see how that could possibly be a challenge to keep a balance between your work and personal life. I'm not a doctor or a police officer, so I'm making some assumptions here, and I won't pretend to have tips to answer for those scenarios. But like I've been saying, to me, it's just about your mindset. Finding the balance between dedicating your time, attention, and energy to your whole self and not just the professional you. Another thing that makes it hard to keep this balance is society. I'm going to pick up where I left off on my earlier rant. There are so many negative perceptions in society for people that actually want work life balance. And while there are many companies that are recognizing the need to create balance for their employees, it's still a challenge for many. I get so annoyed when I hear millennials and Gen Z described as lazy or not as hardworking. And the reason is that we're asking too much of our employers. I read a post on LinkedIn that talked about the unrealistic expectations millennials and Gen Z want from their employers. The person writing this is just talking about common perceptions of Gen Z and Gen Y, AKA millennials. So I don't think it was her personal perspective, but what she shared are things that I have often heard. So let me just read a few excerpts for you. Listen to these descriptions of work styles. These are work styles of millennials and Gen Z. They view their work as an expression of themselves, not as a definition of themselves. God forbid we choose not to make our job our identity. Goodness gracious. They want to know the bigger picture and where they fit in. They seek to balance lifestyle and work and focus more on lifestyle. They're less likely to seek managerial or leadership positions because it could compromise their life outside of work. They are seeking continuous learning and taking advantage of training made available to them. Like, why are these bad things? I genuinely don't get it. The whole tone of these messages makes it sound as if focusing on what you gain from your career versus solely focusing on what you give to your employer is a bad thing, which, like, excuse me for thinking of myself. I just find it fascinating. And then there's this term that just irks my soul, which is quiet quitting. Have you heard of this? I'm sure many of you have heard of this. It's a term coined back, I think, like in 2022, sometime after the pandemic. Essentially, quiet quitting is a concept that employees will only do what's in their job description and they won't give any additional effort. They'll no longer go above and beyond their job description. And it's seen as an issue because many jobs require some level of extra effort to meet business needs. And this gets on my nerves because when the term is often used, it's described as employees becoming lazy because they don't want to go above and beyond their job description. When what it sounds like to me is employers are feeling the pain of a shift in employee demographics from employees that work to serve their employer needs to a demographic that's actually thinking about themselves. Gallup's done some research on this, and they found that those that are essentially what's coined as quiet quitters are also those that tend to not be engaged at work. And when Gallup dug deeper into that data, the reasons that these individuals aren't engaged is they want more opportunities to learn and grow. They want someone at work that encourages their development. They want to feel like people at work care about them as a person, and they want to know what's expected of them at work. Those were the four core reasons that people were not engaged and therefore perceived as quiet quitters. Call me crazy, but that doesn't sound like a tall ask. Sounds to me like individuals just want to be seen as people and find balance in their work. They don't want to just be seen as a means to an end for their employer, but they want their employer to also support them with what they want and need. I didn't mean to go too far down that rabbit hole, but it's still just all aligned to what we're talking about today. We need more balance. We need our employers to be able to enable that as well. So if you're listening and you're an entrepreneur, you own your own business, or you lead a team, you have a team that reports to you, just make sure that you're keeping in mind the whole person when you're working with your teams. These are people, they're not cogs in a wheel. If I think about my own experiences, I will say I am very fortunate to work for a company that actually sees their employees as people. So I'm grateful I have that support and I'm not experiencing those things I just described that I read in that article. But personally, I have struggled with balancing work life and personal life. I actually spent essentially all of my 20s living to work. It wasn't until the last few years that I've actually started realizing I was over indexing on my career and not giving as much attention to the things in my personal life as I probably should be. But I had a hard time pacing myself, especially once I tasted success. Once I saw my career start to take off, I was locked in. I just wanted more and more success. I wanted to keep growing. I wanted to keep moving up, in the corporation, and I just felt like I had something to prove. And if I keep it real, I still feel like I have something to prove. I feel like that's often a challenge for people that come from low income households. It's almost like I'm not trying to, paint this with a broad brush or whatever that saying is, but I'm just reflecting on my own experiences, right? Like it's almost like a survival complex. It's like the fear of being without or going back to how things once were just lights a fire under you to keep hustling. And for the record, my mom did an amazing job raising me. And while we didn't have a lot of money, she always made sure I was taken care of. But coming from humble beginnings, it just sticks in your head. And sometimes I have to check myself that it's okay. I can slow down. I don't have to be nervous of losing what I built. I put in the work. I got myself to where I am now, and I can give myself some grace and slow down. Coupled with that is my drive for achievement. I set a high bar for myself and I push myself to always excel at whatever I do. It's 100% unrealistic, but that is how my brain works. And it's exhausting. It often drives me to work harder and harder, and it causes me to put too much focus and value on work versus other areas of my life, and it puts me at risk of burnout. Slowing down or drawing boundaries on my work life sometimes feels like I'm drawing a boundary on my own progress or on my own potential. That's not true. If anything, I can be a better version of myself at work if I actually let myself slow down, enjoy life, and find happiness in other things. Okay, before we wrap up, let's talk through some recipes for creating more balance between our work and our personal lives. The first is get clear on what matters most to you. Think about what matters most to you in life. Now, think about where you spend most of your time and attention in life. Do those line up? Now, naturally, work takes about 40 hours or more of our lives per week because that's just how full time jobs are designed. So, work will always have a big chunk of your attention. The thing to think about here is how much time and attention are you giving to other things that matter to you outside of those 40 hours? Are you fully present? Are you creating the right amount of space for other things that matter to you? And if you can't think of other things that matter to you, maybe it's time to explore that. Because if you truly want more balance in your life, but all you have for yourself is work, work will always win your time and attention. Reflect on the role you want work to play in your life. Everyone's circumstances will vary. Our professions are different, our careers may be in different stages, but just think, what role do you want work to play in your life? Is it the primary role, and are you okay with that? Maybe you're in a stage of your life or with where your values are, that's how you feel, and then that's fine. That's a personal choice of yours. But if you don't want work to play the biggest role in your life or take up more space in your life than other things that matter to you, it's important to make that distinction now. Set boundaries. When you're clear on what matters to you and where you want to focus your attention, this can help you identify where you may need to create some boundaries. These could be boundaries for yourself and for others around you. When I first started the job I have now, I remember having a transparent conversation with my boss, letting her know I have workaholic tendencies and I do my best to stay off email on weekends and evenings. I wanted her to be aware upfront of the boundaries that I set. She was super supportive and receptive. And I feel like sometimes boundaries have a negative connotation to them, but boundaries aren't negative. They're actually really healthy. That's all I have for today's episode. Thank you for listening today. When you get some time to yourself over the next few days, reflect on today's recipes and take some time to really think through them. Remember, nothing is wrong with having a job you love, dedicating time to it, and working hard. It's all about balance. Make room for all the things you enjoy in addition to your work. I look forward to chatting with you all again next time. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. God bless. And that's a wrap. Another candid chat among friends. If today's episode resonated with you, hit that follow button, share the episode with your friends, and leave a review. I would love to hear what resonated most and love to hear any of the thoughts that you have on the episode. Hope to see you soon, and don't forget to drop your questions or insights on our Instagram at Ressa's Take.